Hi, I'm Dr. Mark, and I'm a voice teacher and stage director. Whether you're a professional pop or rock star that's wanting to take your performance to a next level, or you're just interested in making your car singing or shower singing easier and more comfortable and fun, I can help you get there. I'll start doing that today by reacting to and teaching you singing and performing tips that we can learn from the top performers around the world. Let's learn from Dimash performing Daybreak in Bastau. Here we go.
是一个秋天，而我那么眷恋，然后想起他们那双无助的眼，住在那美丽风景残破的地方，我听到一声追响，振翅山谷。就是那个秋天，才看不到爸爸的脸，他有他的秋天，躲进我重生的季节。
Okay, are you seeing any signs of stress or tension anywhere that doesn't belong with the song? It doesn't belong with the character or the words? No, he's keeping it really easy. He's keeping those lower notes really open and resonant and back, but still really placed forward, so they have some fullness to them. This section we just got to, he brought that placement really forward and bright with the more of an A space instead of that taller O space he had in those lower notes, which made it sound a little more pop-like. What is drawing your attention? Well, to me, what's drawing my attention is what's going on with his face. The very beginning, his movement, he's kind of pacing. It kind of gets this restless, unsettled feeling that we're also hearing in the music, so that they're working together to help us feel the same thing. Then we get here, when he starts singing, the movement stops, draws our attention straight to his face, and we're paying attention to the motion there in his face. That's what's really grabbing our attention. And then his voice and the different vocal colors are just organically kind of feeding that. Why the red lights? Daybreak? Red lights? Don't know. That's cool. So how do we choose which color to use? How do we choose whether to make it breathy or airy or really lean into a sound and give a little more grit? What is it that dictates that? How do we choose it so it works, right? Well, the first thing that we have to do is really pay attention to the text. What is the text calling for? What are the words calling for? What are they evoking? And if you're just speaking them, which ones would get more accent? Which words would you put more grit in? Where we really need to start is in that speech-like place where we're using the same kind of colors and emotions that we use in everyday life. That's what makes it believable. Then we can kind of expand on that and give more drama to what we're saying, more variety in color, more richness, more fullness. But it's got to start with the believable everyday speech. and what seems honest and genuine and true. Here, I'm really surprised by how much dynamic contrast he's actually giving us here within a single phrase. It's a really pretty intense roller coaster of louds and softs within a single phrase, which has some potential pitfalls of it sounding a little wah-wah-like and a little hard to understand. But in this situation, it's not the case for me. It is something to watch out for some people. But because he's really tying it into how this would be delivered speech-like, and he's keeping his voice in this really consistent place, then it works. So for you, what can you do today? Well, really take the time to speak through your songs. Speak through the text you're going to sing until you feel like it's believable. It's how you would really say it if you were talking to someone else. Once you're doing that, then record it, listen to it. Notice where you're putting accent, where you're putting stress, and what the important moments are that you can add more to, that you can give more color, more either distress, more clarity, the breathiness, where you can go softer, where you kind of need to lean into it based on what your normal speech does for you. After we do that, then the next thing we have to do is we need to pay attention to the music, see what it's calling for. One of the things I mean by what it's calling for is if there's a lot going on instrumentation wise, if there's a lot of different instruments and it's really kind of loud, then we can't get super soft with our voice if we're supposed to be the main vocalist. So we can't get away with the softer, breathier sounds. We have to get something that's going to cut through. So that kind of limits our choices. If the music is really soft, if it's really minimal in the amount of instruments it has, and the mood is really muted, then we can't really get away with a loud, bright, brash sound. It just doesn't work. So we have to see what our confines are, what the limits are of the text and the music, and then see how expressive we can be within those limits. Now, let me caution you, instead of being so concerned with the limits, push the limits, take them as far as you can, but be aware of where they are first. Upper two smile, clear add in the back and in the front, getting us this bright forward sound. The water here and how they're using the water and the lights, love it. It is so cool, so gorgeous, so interesting, so captivating. And they're letting it match the music, and it's great. I'm still a little confused by the red at the beginning, but here in this moment, it seems to really be capturing the intensity and the excitement of the moment. Love it. Notice how to get this more classical, warmer sound. Instead of a in the back, it's more an o, in the back. That's what's making the difference there. Plus the addition and subtraction of vibrato. So how did he go through all those different ranges so smoothly and so easily and have it sound so seamless? He didn't make the bottom overly heavy. He didn't really try to lean into that bottom. He actually kept it relatively light. And the bottom was even kind of on the verge of vocal fry a little bit there in the bottom. And as he went up, he kept it really light, trusted the airflow to take him up, kept the placement consistent, and didn't try to push anywhere. He just kept this feeling of sliding on up the scale, keeping it really speech-like and simple. By doing that and not over pressurizing on the bottom, it lets him transition through those registers relatively easy. Also keeping the ass space in the back, keeping it nice and open without any tension, from the bottom going up also helps him transition through what would otherwise be thought of as breaks or passaggio points. He's just blowing right through them because he's starting on the bottom with a really balanced place. What can you do today? Well, the first place to start is actually at the top and doing slides down. That's going to help you identify where you're going to, the feeling you need to be at, so that when you're going there, you can start on the lower notes more in the place where you're going than starting on the bottom in whatever place you feel comfortable on the bottom and trying to carry that up. We want the end in mind. Then once you get those slides from the top down, then try go from bottom to bottom, trying to keep it consistent all the way between the two registers. But for most people, if they start at the top and slide down, they're going to get a much more consistent sound, because majority of us speak too low, we overpressurize the bottom, our resonant spaces are usually collapsed on the bottom, and it's just too easy to overpressurize and not sing efficiently on the bottom. When we go up top, our voice somehow knows that to be able to get those at all, it's got to do all these different things. So if we can start at the top where our body has to make it happen and keep that sensation down, it usually works best. His jaw also stayed relatively relaxed for this whole thing. It wasn't jutting forward, and it stayed in a relatively healthy, consistent place. Awesome. Love the performance. So beautiful, so captivating, so interesting. Love the performance elements are going around him. They're epic. They were huge. These huge, big water jets going up in the air with lights hitting them, making all kinds of interesting patterns. What I love is that he lets that kind of happen behind him. What he focuses on is doing his thing. He doesn't rely on them to do the work for him. He doesn't. The performances where I've seen him with relatively little behind him versus a huge display behind him, it seems like he's pretty much just doing the same thing. He's doing his thing and lets that background support him. Really smart. So what can we learn from that, both vocally and performance-wise? Well, we can learn not to plan and make our decisions on vocal technique or performance based on the venue. That we need to have a technique, both performance-wise and vocally, that we can take anywhere. We can take to a small room, we can take to a big theater, that we know how to adjust if we need to, but essentially we know what it should feel like. We know what we do, and we do that well. Now, how do we do that? Well, first and foremost, vocally, we need to rely on the sensation. We need to train our brain to sing based on what it feels like, not on what it sounds like. It's a little easier here if we have this monitor in our ear. We're hearing a bit more accurate sound, and we can adjust based on that. But really, the smartest thing is to sing based on what it feels like here in our body. And so when we go into a different place and it sounds totally different, we can just block that out and go based on sensation, and our technique will stay the same and we won't damage our voice, and we'll have a consistent sound. Performance-wise, it's the same thing. If all of a sudden we try to change everything we're doing because it's a totally different space, our performance isn't going to be as consistent. We're not going to be able to be as honest and true. It's going to be a little more unpredictable. Now, being spontaneous and unpredictable isn't always a bad thing, but for the most part, we want about 95% of our performance to be the same night to night to night, and allow for that 5% of change that comes with live performance. It's important because both the performer and the design team and everyone working around them need to have a framework to rely on to be able to refine and really make solid. It also helps our brain to be able to be comfortable and to get into a routine that is really polished and consistent, but allow for that change and allow for us to stay spontaneous enough so our mind and our body stays engaged. The key to staying engaged, even when 95% is the same night after night after night, show after show after show, is making sure that our context is really clear, really emotionally potent, and really meaningful to us. It ends up being like reliving a really powerful memory time after time after time, which we can do. We can stay engaged with, we can believe, and we can enjoy. And if we need to keep it fresh, we can change that context that we've created, and it'll make the whole performance fresh and new again. If you want a voice lesson, a performance coaching, or want me to work with you or your group to help you sing easier or perform at a consistently higher level, book a time with me at mrperformingartsstudio.com. I look forward to working with you online.